This is the story of Doug McClure, the boyish television cowboy so easy to like that almost nobody noticed what he was carrying behind that smile. 5 marriages, a private struggle with addiction, and a final year spent convincing the world he'd beaten cancer while it was actually killing him. That's what got buried under 30 years of good press and easy charm. Douglas Osborne McClure was born on May 11, 1935 in Glendale, California, to an Irish-American father and an English-born mother who'd immigrated to the United States as a child. He had one older brother, Donald Jr., and a childhood that reads almost like a rehearsal for the roles he'd later play. By age 8, he was already riding and roping horses, and his teenage summers were spent working a Nevada cattle ranch where he rode as a bronco buster in local rodeos. High school brought football, swimming, and basketball, and it was a single role in a school play that pulled him toward acting almost by accident. From there, he went to Santa Monica City College and then UCLA, modeling and doing television commercials to cover the cost. What he built by his early 20s was a face made for network television, blonde and easygoing, the kind that seemed to resist aging entirely. He'd go on playing 20-something characters well into his 40s, and audiences never blinked. In 1962, he landed the role that would define him for the rest of his life, Trampas, the good-natured cowpoke on NBC's The Virginian. The show ran 9 seasons and became the 3rd longest-running series of its era, and Doug was there for every single one of them. To millions of viewers, he simply was Trampas, steady and likable, exactly the guy you'd want riding beside you. Off-camera, none of that steadiness held. He married 5 times and divorced 4, and 2 of those divorces happened while he was still filming The Virginian, which meant he was playing a wholesome cowboy on primetime television while his own marriage was falling apart just out of frame. His first marriage to actress Barbara Luna lasted from 1961 to 1963, and 3 more marriages and divorces followed before things finally settled. That stability arrived in 1979 when he married Diane Fernberg, the woman who stayed his wife until his death 16 years later, and with whom he had 2 daughters, Tanae and Valerie. For a man whose entire public identity ran on effortless charm, 5 marriages and 4 divorces, most of it invisible to the audience, tell a much harder story underneath. When The Virginian ended in 1971, Doug tried to reinvent himself, and it didn't go smoothly. A pilot with Bette Davis went nowhere, a spy series called Search lasted a single season, and a William Shatner co-starring vehicle, Barbary Coast, lasted exactly as long. What followed was a run of low-budget science fiction adventure films, The Land That Time Forgot, At the Earth's Core, The People That Time Forgot, movies that kept him working but wore down his standing as a serious leading man. Critics weren't kind about it, and decades later the British sci-fi comedy Red Dwarf would even use his name as a punchline for cheap filmmaking. Doug was candid about how that stretch actually felt from the inside. In a 1988 interview, he put it plainly, "I had this feeling everybody thought I was dead. I didn't quit. I did some films and theater in London. I went to New York. But I had been on television so much people thought I wasn't around." That's a strange kind of grief, being alive and working every day while the public has already quietly filed you away as gone. There's a chapter of Doug's life that almost never makes it into the official write-ups. People who knew him personally have described a period he spent recovering from addiction, part of it reportedly in Arizona, where he took up painting as part of getting his life back together. Friends who saw the work later called it surprisingly accomplished for someone who'd only just picked up a brush. That detail comes from personal accounts rather than mainstream press coverage at the time, so treated as a lesser documented piece of his story rather than a settled fact, but it fits the larger pattern of a man whose easy public image sat directly on top of struggles nobody in the audience was meant to see. A second wind arrived in 1987 when Doug landed the sitcom Out of This World playing Mayor Kyle Applegate for 4 seasons. He kept working steadily into the early 90s, picking up guest spots on Murder, She Wrote, and Magnum P.I., and turning in a memorable performance in the 1977 miniseries Roots. Then around 1993, doctors found lung cancer, and here's where it gets worse, he kept working anyway. By late 1994, he'd been fighting that cancer for roughly a year, and on December 16th, he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His old Virginian co-star James Drury stood beside him as he addressed the crowd, and Doug told them the honor had given him the incentive to get well, adding, "I am well." His longtime friend Robert Fuller later said that was exactly what people close to Doug believed at the time. "We had thought he was getting better. He wasn't." 3 weeks after that ceremony, on January 8, 1995, Doug collapsed from an apparent stroke while filming an episode of One West Waikiki in Hawaii. He was flown back to Los Angeles, and doctors discovered the cancer had already spread to his liver and his bones. Doug McClure died on February 5, 1995, at his home in Sherman Oaks, California, surrounded by his wife Diane and his family. He was 59 years old, 3 months short of his 60th birthday. Robert Fuller said that near the end, Doug wasn't focused on himself at all. He was more concerned about his family than himself. He was buried at Woodlawn Memorial Cemetery in Santa Monica. His cultural afterlife took an odd turn a few years later, when Matt Groening and the writers of The Simpsons drew on Doug, along with actor Troy Donahue, as inspiration for the washed-up, overeager actor character Troy McClure. Doug's own daughters reportedly teased him about it while he was still alive, calling him Troy McClure as a private joke after he caught an episode and asked, half laughing, "Are they making fun of me?" It's a fitting footnote for a man whose entire career ran on the gap between a beloved public image and a much messier private reality, a gap he kept closing right up to the very end, standing in front of a cheering crowd and making everyone believe everything was fine. Doug McClure spent more than 30 years playing the guy everyone liked instantly and trusted completely. Off-screen, he was navigating 5 marriages, a fight to stay relevant in an industry that had already started writing him off, and in his final months, a disease he chose to face in public with a smile even as it was quietly killing him. That's not a scandal, it's something sadder and more human, a man who understood exactly what his audience wanted to see and gave it to them right up until the moment he couldn't anymore.